Good morning, Pelham Road. I know it doesn't feel like it, but I've actually been gone a little while. The devotions you've been hearing for the last week and a half, I pre-did before I left town. Actually, two of them were reruns from back in April. But I'm back now, and I've had a few people ask me about the theme song. I think what I've decided to do, because all the songs are really good and I love music, is that we're going to have a theme song each week, all right? And according to our executive producer, Angela Suderman, as long as I keep it below about 20 seconds, and as long as I don't pick anything by the Beatles, we ought to be good with the Facebook and YouTube folks, all right? So next week, I'll debut our song for the week. Just a couple of announcements to remind you of some things. If you got children, Khan Academy, whether they're going to be going to in-person school or going to be learning from home, the Khan Academy is a great place to find all the information you need. And also, keeping up with Pelham Road, the Instagram account. All right, go over to the Instagram account at Pelham Road. Also, next week, we'll be introducing a couple of new features. I guess if anything I'm learning by doing this is that I have to continually be sort of evolving and changing. And so we're going to introduce some new features next week. All right. Let's get to our fresh devotion. I opened this morning by reading Matthew 5. Usually this is called the Beatitudes. The version I'm reading from is the Cotton Patch version, which is a Southern American version. Not really a translation, but more of an interpretation, transliteration. And so here it is, the Southern American version of the Beatitudes. The spiritually humble are God's people, for they are citizens in this new order. They who are concerned to the point of action shall see their concerns fulfilled. They who wear God's bridle and are His people, they will be His partners across the land. And they who have an unsatisfied appetite for the right, they're God's people. And they will be given plenty to chew on. The generous are God's people, and they'll be treated with generosity. They whose motives are pure, they're God's people, and they're going to have spiritual insight. Men and women of peace and goodwill are God's people, and they will be known forever as His children. They who have endured much for what's right, they're God's people. They're citizens of this new order. You are all God's people when others call you names and harass you and tell all kinds of false tales on you just because you follow me. Be cheerful, good-natured, because it's your spiritual advantage is great. For that's the way they treated people of conscience in the past and always. Oftentimes, this passage is seen as the opening to the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5. It could be a sermon. It may be delivered as a sermon. But for at least this morning, consider this not a sermon, but a lesson. Now, the difference between a sermon and a lesson are subtle, but they're meaningful. A sermon, well, it's heard, reacted to, possibly, maybe put into practice, you hope. But a lesson, A lesson raises the expectation of actually being practiced. A piano lesson is not hearing or reading alone. It is performing what you've been taught. Practice makes perfect. The expectation of Jesus is not for us to memorize these Beatitudes. His expectation is that we live with humility, generosity, and a good nature. So let's do that today.